We are on the morning break on the first day of questioning of the undercover police officer Carlo Soracchi, who, using the cover name Carlo Neri, infiltrated a number of Socialist Party anti-fascist groups, deceiving 3 women into sexual relationships. We've had a number of restriction orders this morning, so there's a number of things we can't talk about. Apologies in advance if it were a bit vague about some issues. I think we can talk in general terms about the topics, but not specifics. I'm joined by Rafe, who's a regular of this parish. What have you made of what we've heard from Carlo this morning?
Yeah, I think he comes across as somebody. He's answering the questions directly, but a little bit timidly, right?
Yeah.
So he's. I think he says a lot of, "Sorry, I can't help with that. I'm trying to, but I haven't got that much knowledge about it." So I think he's sort of setting himself up as somebody who's a very small cog in a much bigger machine, and he's trying to be truthful, but he won't have that much to say about the wider justifications for the deployment. It was a slow start as well, I thought.
Yeah, very slow start. I mean, so as is often the case with the undercover officers, it started off with his recruitments. We saw a lot more this time of the scenarios that officers were presented with before going into the field, which opened up with one about you're giving a lift home to a young female activist who has romantic intentions. She invites you in. How do you react? And he said, "Oh, I would have said I was too drunk to do anything." And it's like, well, you are meant to be driving. That wasn't brought up. But he was. I mean, I think one of the key things is he was a lot more candid about the conversations about sexual relationships that existed within the back office and with particular sergeants and back office staff.
Yeah, absolutely. He said he was shown the tradecraft manual. He was aware of the relevant sections in that. There were frequent but informal discussions about sexual relationships, and I think his phrase, and I think that's also in his witness statement, isn't it? He was confronted with a witness statement. It was my understanding that sexual relationships were accepted as an occupational hazard.
Yes, yeah. And he came back to that. He talked about they were big boys and they would know what to do. It was. You got the impression that there was that like he felt that like it was a very informal, like, don't make too much of a fuss about it and it'll all be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll find a way of dealing with it when it comes up to it. Avoid it if you can. A little bit like the tenor of the tradecraft manual advice, but avoid it if you can. But there will be a situation where you can't, and then we'll deal with it in some way. And then obviously there is the kind of informal regulations around it, but then also quite a lot of emphasis on the role of his wife.
Yeah. I mean, that was interesting because he was saying that HN9 repeatedly visited his wife, which was bothering her and like bothering him. He said that he got the impression that HN9 thought that he was perhaps doing something he shouldn't be while he's in his undercover role, and was kept asking his wife if she was all right. I got the impression that he thought that HN9 was trying his luck with his wife or something. Do you know what I mean?
Possibly, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was really odd.
Yeah, that seemed to be the one moment where maybe he did sort of present himself as like something was going wrong in this unit. If this officer or this sergeant, I think it was, can visit my wife while I'm at work, and I don't know what they're talking about, but maybe she's giving her ideas that I'm not being quite faithful, and so that he had some conflict or some problems when he was coming home.
I think he's the first undercover officer that we've seen at the inquiry who said that he did speak to his wife about the possibility of sex whilst undercover with activists. He said that she was quite skeptical about his abilities to avoid it.
Yeah. But why? He was asked, why was she skeptical? You got to ask her.
Yeah.
Right? But it did seem like she was maybe less trusting of him than well, rightly so.
Yeah, quite as it turns out, yeah. And also that she felt that, the SDS were all boys together and she didn't trust them either.
Yeah.
I mean, quite sensible woman by the sounds of it. We also got on to some of the stuff from his Operation Hearn interview. There was stuff about his conversations with HN81, a company named Dave Hagan, who was the officer who infiltrated Movement for Justice and spied on the Lawrence family campaign. He was asked about that as part of Operation Hearn. He didn't have much to say about that at all, really.
No, there was a section in the interview that was titled The Lawrence Campaign. I think he was confronted with that, and it started off with him saying the SDS was targeted into the Lawrence campaign, and then there was a set of questions around what did you mean by that? And you visited HN81 at home. What did he tell you about his targeting of the campaign? Ultimately, I think he kind of rolled back quite a lot from that opening statement and said, he was targeting Movement for Justice. There was no sense of people being smeared. HN81 was a private man, never really told me much about individuals that he was targeting.
And he was also like, oh, and I wasn't interested in Stephen Lawrence, so if he did mention it, I wouldn't have remembered, which is, I mean, it's something we've heard from so many of the undercover officers. I wasn't interested in Stephen Lawrence, though he did say there was a lot of chit-chat within the unit about Stephen Lawrence, about the opposite of what we heard from so many officers, that it was discussed. They were discussing all sorts of things. They were discussing each other's deployments, which is a departure from what we've heard from a majority of the other undercover officers.
Yeah, and also the Macpherson inquiry, right? He was aware of it. He was aware that it was significant for the Met, that it had implications for their work, and that there was a line. And so he was questioning about what that line was. You know, what do you mean when they say there is a line? And ultimately says, I was aware that you do not infiltrate grieving families. I was aware that, you know, racial justice campaigns are probably off limit, or at least that there were a few problems around that. So we had a little bit of that kind of, you know, setting the scene around, you know, where are your standards? What did you know you could do as an undercover officer, and where can you not tread?
Yeah. We also got to the stuff about Peter Francis in part of the Operation Hearn interview, and we saw those handwritten notes we've seen from so many of those interviews, and it lots of stuff about him, you know, very angry, wants to track them down. But both Peter Francis and HN123, who were the officers who brought legal action against the Met, got compensation, and also then about Peter Francis having that interview with the Observer, and the notes say real anger, you know, wants to sort him out. And he was pressed on this, and he was like, "Oh no, a lot of time has passed. I think everybody was angry. I'm not angry anymore. I wish them well." Yeah, not very credible, really.
Yeah, it goes to the idea of his credibility, right? So to what extent are you actually wishing some of your former colleagues, you know, to what extent are you kind of trying to damage their reputation? To what extent are you speaking truthfully to us, and so on? And as you say, he kind of said, "I'm no longer angry. No one in the unit is angry anymore." But he was then asked right at the end, you know, to what extent are you talking to some other former colleagues? You know, are you friends with them? And you know, we ended on this point where he said, "I'm talking to two of them regularly." But I've never really talked to them about the evidence that we're hearing in the inquiry.
Which I mean, like there was a laughter in the public gallery when he said that, because what else are you talking about? You know, the haircut of the chair. I mean, like, come on, you know, what a nonsense. Yeah, he wrote down the two names. Generally, I would expect we'd hear what those. I mean, it'd be the ciphers of those two names when we go back after the break. Yeah, anything else stand out for you from this morning's questioning?
Not particularly. I think.
No. I mean, he comes across very much as a copper, right? He's not. I don't think. You don't get the impression that he's going to give away anything particular, though. I mean, he has already gone a lot further than so many of the officers have, but there hasn't been any real, like, almost despite himself. You know, it's like kind of you get the impression like, as you say, he's presenting himself as slightly maybe a bit of a simpleton almost. Like and maybe not kind of realizing the impact of some of the things that he's admitting to.
Yeah, I think especially when he's talking about the sort of informal knowledge that existed within the unit, there might be more to come from him in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, we hope so, because I mean, I think it's that area of those informal conversations which he's like been willing to talk about, which so many of the officers have pretended never happened. Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to hear what he comes out with when we hear about the banter that exists within the unit. His written statement has been published already, which is great, because I mean the inquiry has been very poor in terms of publishing those in like a timely manner. So you know, it's it'd be interesting to see if, you know, if there's things from that which he's going to contradict, which we got the impression very much from the witnesses last week that he was all over the place on that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It is helpful when you have the witness statement in front of you, especially when you're watching from home. You know, it's sort of part of the conversations, and you don't actually know where the questioning is going. You don't often understand the purpose of the questioning unless you've seen the statement and kind of get a sense of, here, that's our key moments of contention or areas of questioning.
Just from what I understand, the beginning of the stuff that wasn't restricted because of the breach, a lot of it was without any sound this morning. The technical problems abound at the undercover policing inquiry. So you have been following at home, and you kind of find it quite difficult to follow. I've done my best to report in tweet form what's being said. obviously with the restriction orders, they don't just cover the thing which was a breach, they cover things either side of it in an attempt to obscure what the breach actually was. So there's a lot of stuff that came out. There were some absolute pearlers actually, which hopefully will appear in the transcript when it's finally published. But we should probably head back in. It's been 10 minutes. Anything else you'd like to add?
Just to say, Mitting got a little bit annoyed at some point with the restriction orders, I think.
Yeah, very much.
I don't think there's purpose for me to rise. I'm going to just sit here and tell you not to report anything for this one single minute. And then he was reminding us, like, actually, we need to rise.
Yeah. I think this is a tension that exists within the inquiry. I mean, because this desire, I think, comes from the police that it's not just that particular moment should be censored, but actually things either side of it, so that people don't realize what the thing that was the breach was. I think was entirely, particularly with the second breach, I don't want to get into it too much, but it's entirely unnecessary. The breach was very specific, very limited. I think it was very obvious to a lot of people what that breach was. They could have just done with I think Mitting was being very sensible and trying to, we have only a limited amount of time. And when he rises, we lose like 10, 15 minutes. It is a very frustrating process. Anyway, we better go back in. Thanks for joining us. We're doing another longer video at lunchtime. Please join us then. Bye for now.